Okay, so in the last few months, I have played Dark Souls 2 and replayed Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 3, and Elden Ring several times. So I wanted to update and finish my Soulsborne boss tier list. I've actually backed Sekiro out of this tier list because I don't have strong enough thoughts on those bosses to include them, really. I did make a video including them, but, I kind of one day I'll probably play it again and change my mind entirely. I don't hold myself to those opinions because I didn't really sink my teeth into Sekiro. I played it once and enjoyed it, but I find it too different from the rest of these games to really be comparable. So first thing I want to do is make some updates based on some of my replays. I think that I was a little bit too persuaded by kind of the community feeling about Ornstein and Smo, and I ranked them, I think, too highly. My personal opinion, honestly, I think that the boss sucks. I really do. I don't find it an enjoyable experience. I can't even find where I rated them. Why can I not find Ornstein and Smo? There they are. I ranked them low B. Honestly, I think they're among the duos, and believe me, in Dark Souls 2, there's a lot of bad duos. I think Ornstein and Smo is one of the least fun. I'm going to give it like a D. And I don't even actually think that's controversial. I feel like everybody says it's controversial that I don't like Ornstein and Smo, but then nobody seems to like Ornstein and Smo. I don't know who actually likes them. It's such a glitchy fight. It's just so completely unenjoyable to me. You just get completely glitched out in one shot by Ornstein. Phase 2 is so easy. Once I've made it to Phase 2, I've never had to do the fight again because frankly, I've only ever made it to Phase 2 with Smo. I've never tried an Ornstein Phase 2, but it's just so much easier with one of them. So Phase 2 and Phase 1 feel completely unbalanced with each other, and then Phase 1, the two bosses don't work well together. I don't know why people would think it's a good duo fight. You just have to run around until there's kind of a fortuitous opening in their AIs. They don't actually have moves that complement each other and leave openings for you. It's just a matter of chance. So I think they're a bad boss fight. And conversely, I think that I rated the Godskin duo so too low. I think they're better than Ornstein and Smo. I still don't think they're a particularly good fight, but they're actually a decently balanced duo. I had been playing too much NG+7, I think, in Elden Ring. When I did a couple new games, and including my level 1 run, they're a lot better balanced than I thought. The pillars are very large, so it's actually pretty easy to separate them. Unlike, say, Ornstein and Smo, the pillars are very skinny, and Smo smashes them. And yeah, the Godskin Noble smashes the pillars too, but you can interact with them in a different way because you can jump up on them, and I think Godskin Duo is actually decent. I'm going to put it at the very bottom of C tier, but still reserve my, an opportunity to change my mind about that later. I still frankly cheese them for the most part with sleep because they're not fun, but I think they're better than I gave them credit for. Moog, I committed to finally learning, and I think he's actually an incredible fight. I think he's S tier. He's very fun, he's very fair. The reason he's not the absolute highest, and I'm going to put him low S tier, is I do still hold the opinion that his fire trails in Phase 2 last a little bit too long. I'm just not the biggest fan of them. But I've learned a lot more how to deal with his moveset. And he feels very fair and fun. And he's very punishing. His attacks do a lot of damage. But none of them feel unfair, really. Outside of the fire trails, I think. They're not unfair. I think they're just a little bit unbalanced. They stick around for a little bit too long, take up a little too much of the arena. But I feel like I've drunk the Kool-Aid a bit on Moog after committing to learning his moveset. Another one I want to adjust is Morgott. Even in my level 1 run, he was just too easy. He really has a balancing problem. I think he has a more interesting moveset than Godric the Grafted, so I'm going to put him above him, but he is a lower S tier for me. He's still S tier because his moveset's so incredible and the moment in the game is so incredible, and obviously the setting is very cool at the base of the Erd tree there. So he's not dropping out of the S tier for me, but he really has an issue with HP. He's just too easy for where he is in the game. Next, I put Metter in the B tier for some reason, and fighting her again, she's just not very fun. So you can get lucky with her, with her RNG and get some of the more fun attacks, but if you're ever to her side, she does that creepy crawly finger attack that I have no idea how you're supposed to dodge it. And if you're ever at a distance from her, I think she's not fun at all. And you kind of have to get at a distance from her in her phase 2 because of her AoEs that are nearly instant and can, destroy you. Like her laser seems unavoidable. I still haven't figured it out really. And so because of that, I think phase 2 worsens the fight quite a bit. So I'm going to put her in the C tier. And lastly, this one kind of hurts me because I like them so much, I guess sort of lore-wise, but I'm going to drop the Twin Princes down into the A tier. And that is because on a replay, I've kind of just realized that it's just not that complicated of a fight. It's just a little bit too easy. It is really easy to dodge Lorian's moves. And yes, phase 2 is harder because of the magic spam from Lothric, which doesn't feel unfair. It still feels good. But the core of the fight is still just dodging around Lorien, which is really straightforward. So I think that it's just mechanically not interesting enough to be in the S tier. But I do still love the fight, so it's high A tier for me. Okay, so cleaning up, Old Demon King I had missed in Dark Souls 3, and I think it's okay. I don't think it's a mind-blowing fight. I like how tired he is towards the end of the fight. But he has just a pretty simple moveset. He doesn't do a lot of damage. He is pretty easy for where he is in the game. So he's really just kind of like a mid boss for me. I'm going to put him sort of mid to high C tier. Okay, Dark Souls 1, some of the bosses that I missed, and then the DLC. So Priscilla, she was like not very good. She's invisible, which is decently interesting, but it doesn't feel like a fun fight. You just kind of like follow her footsteps around and smack her around, and every once in a while she'll do a massive hit against you. Just wasn't very fun. I'm like not really gonna fight her again. I really liked the Painted World of Ariamis. I love that area, so I'll go back there, but I will probably just skip her boss fight in the future. So I'm gonna put her in a D tier. Dark Sun Gwendolyn, also not a very fun fight. Again, not particularly hard, but it's not very rewarding either, so I don't really know why I would want to do it again. It's a little bit similar to, this doesn't make any sense, but it feels a little bit similar to me to Renala, because Renala also kind of just teleports away from you a lot and casts spells, but Renala is a lot easier. Gwendolyn, you have to hide behind pillars and run up towards him and get a smack in or two before he teleports away again, and it's just not very fun. So it's a D tier for me. Okay, onto the Dark Souls 1 DLC, which I thought was by far the best part of the game, and I really wish I had made it there on my first playthrough, because it probably would have changed my opinion about the game as a whole. I know I was pretty negative on it at first, but I think the DLC was by far the best part, and I think all of these bosses are at least decent. I think the worst one is actually the Sanctuary Guardian, and that's only because I don't think it leaves enough openings for you. I don't think it's an unfair fight, but I think given the slowness of Dark Souls 1, I think that it is a little bit too aggressive. Just felt a little bit, I guess, just too hard. Maybe it's a skill issue, but it really didn't seem to leave enough time to get any meaningful attacks in, so I'm putting it kind of mid-C tier. On the other hand, Knight Artorias, I completely get the hype now. I think it was the best boss in Dark Souls 1. I think that he showed the heights that kind of slower combat system could go toward. He is aggressive, but not to the point where you never have opportunities to attack. You get attack almost after almost every single one of his attacks. Everything is pretty well telegraphed. It felt like a chess match because, yes, he was aggressive and didn't leave a lot of time to attack, so you had to choose your moments to heal, choose your moments to try to swipe at him. You had to dodge the correct directions to be close enough to attack him before he starts attacking again. I think it was easily the best fight in Dark Souls 1 and showcased how well that combat system could work, the one that's deliberately slower and you have a lot less stamina to play around with than in Dark Souls 3 or Elden Ring. You can't just kind of spin around, roll around and keep attacking. And yeah, he's S tier for me. He's high. Don't know if he's this high. I will put him right here, just below Morgott, because he's a really fun challenge, but I think Morgoth's moveset is a lot more interesting, and I like the gameplay a lot more. But Artorias is going to be the highest Dark Souls 1 boss for me, and I didn't think any Dark Souls 1 bosses would get into the S tier. Ironically, 2 of them from the DLC did, because I also really loved Calamite. He didn't feel like the cleanest fight. He has some kind of funky hitboxes, but the worst one is his head swipe, because he kind of curls his head around and he can swipe you along with him while you're in iframes, and it like just kind of glitches and hits you once you're out of your roll because he pushed you into his hitbox. It's kind of hard to explain, but I think you probably know what I'm talking about if you've fought Calamite. But it felt like he had a ton of health and he does a ton of damage. It felt like a dragon fight, and it did, other than that one issue, it did feel pretty fair. All of his moves are avoidable and, well enough telegraphed that you can figure out pretty quickly how to fight him, and then it's just a matter of executing well. And that's a really fun way for me to play this game. I love those kinds of boss fights. And if I had played Dark Souls 1 before, Midir or Baal, I think he would have been my favorite dragon. I think he's a really fun fight. It felt like a good dragon fight. I enjoyed it a lot. Manus, I know that people seem to really like him, and I think maybe I haven't given him enough of a chance because I found his fight a little bit kind of similar to Sanctuary Guardian, where he was a little bit too aggressive, didn't leave you quite enough time to figure out where to attack. I didn't think that his combos were well suited to this game, so I'm going to put him kind of like high B tier. I think it was cool. I think Manus is probably, maybe Manus and Estelle from Elden Ring are my favorite boss designs they've ever made. I think Manus looked incredible. And obviously once I played Dark Souls 2, the impact that Manus had on that, the Dark Souls universe is amazing. So from a lore perspective, I really like him, both in his own game, Dark Souls 1, and throughout Dark Souls 2. But I don't enjoy the fight very much. I just don't enjoy it so much. I haven't finished Demon Souls, but I actually am hard stuck on Flame Lurker, and Manus reminds me a little bit of Flame Lurker. Like, you don't have the mechanics to fight him appropriately. That's probably untrue, because I know people have beat him, at soul level 1 or whatever, so I know it's possible. Maybe I should watch some of those videos, but I'm trying not to watch, other people's videos. I want to learn these bosses myself. And he was very taxing to me, fighting him in a melee style, because he just had really quick sideways swipes that you can't necessarily easily strafe, so you have to roll. And rolling in Dark Souls 1 is very slow, it takes a lot of stamina, really limits what you can do afterward. And he'll do like 2 or 3 attacks in a row like that can swipe you if you're not rolling through them, and so you're out of stamina, and he either hits you or you don't have time to hit him, and he starts his next combo. I just didn't enjoy the fight. So anyway, high B tier for me. Okay, on to Dark Souls 2. And I just want to give a little intro to Dark Souls 2 to explain how a lot of this is going to go. I thought that the reason Dark Souls 2 gets a lot of hate probably, and the reason I kind of don't love it, is the bosses are very mid. There are a ton of them. They're very boring. They have movesets on the order of like 3 moves. An entire boss will have like 3 moves, sometimes even less. I think the Great Giant, or whatever it's called, the Giant Lord, has like 2 moves. I honestly didn't even see very many of them. The bosses aren't very complex. A lot of them I first tried, so I haven't totally sunk my teeth into a ton of them. The exceptions are the DLCs. I think a lot of the DLC bosses are really good. A lot of the late game bosses there are a couple of late game bosses that I think are pretty good. So anyway, without further ado, most of these are going to be pretty low. I think this is the worst the worst overall showing of bosses in any, certainly in any Souls game, and probably in any FromSoft game, even though I think Bloodborne has pretty bad bosses too. DS2 I feel pretty similar to Bloodborne. Like, the base game bosses are just very forgettable, and the DLC bosses kind of save it. The difference being that Bloodborne's combat system, I think, is a lot better. So anyway, I'll stop stalling here. Most of these are going to be C tier or D tier. Last Giant is no exception. Just a very boring fight. It wasn't hard, so I'm not like pissed about it. But it just like this was the intro fight. It basically was a throwaway fight. It's the first boss you have to run into. And it was just bad. They didn't really teach you anything interesting. You just like swipe at its legs until it's dead, and it just stomps around and not too hard to avoid. On the other hand, I think the Pursuer is one of the better bosses in the game. And to its credit, it shows up like 10 or 15 times. I don't know how many times, but so many times it'll show up in like boss rooms once you've beaten them. And it'll drop Twinkling Titanite. So I fought a ton of them. What I really like about this boss is this feels like the real intro boss to this game. So I think the thing about Dark Souls 2 is stamina costs are so high. It's got that kind of, it doesn't feel as slow as Dark Souls 1, but it has still that very deliberate pace feeling to it, because like a roll takes like a quarter of your stamina bar. And the Pursuer, I think, is a boss that teaches you really well that you can strafe a lot of attacks in this game, in Dark Souls 2. So I'm going to put it pretty high. I enjoyed seeing it every single time I saw it. I don't like it more than Placidus X. I thought it was like it was the real tutorial boss of the game, and I enjoyed it a lot. I think it's a good fight. It's fun. So kind of mid to low A tier. Dragon Rider has like 3 moves, wasn't difficult. I'm not interested in it. It's very mid. I'm gonna give it low C tier because it's not like aggressively bad. It didn't anger me. It's just boring. Old Dragon Slayer, I think, is aggressively bad. I hate Ornstein and Smough, and I hate Ornstein. This is just Ornstein. It just goes to show why I think Ornstein and Smough is a bad fight, because he just has a weird moveset. Frankly, I didn't fight him a ton, so maybe I would have enjoyed it if I got into it more, but I don't like the speed of his moves. Like, his windups are very quick, and then all of a sudden the spear is hitting you. Maybe it's a skill issue. That's totally possible, and I accept that because I just don't care enough about Ornstein as a character to get good at his fight. Ironically, I really like Dragon Slayer armor, which is also based on Ornstein, but a totally different mechanical fight. It has instead of a spear, it's got that big slashing axe and a giant shield. But yeah, I didn't enjoy the fight. So and it's totally optional. I do really like the old Leo ring. Unfortunately, it has a very good reward because I like pokey movesets. Like, I fought with the Zweihander and with the Claymore a lot, so I was using the old Leo ring a lot, so I might need to fight him in future playthroughs if I play Dark Souls 2 again. But that would be the only reason why. It wouldn't be to enjoy the boss, it would be to get the old Leo ring. So the Flexile Sentry I thought was one of the stronger bosses. I really like that it's got kind of 2 separate movesets. You can kind of choose your own adventure with it. And I liked both sides movesets. I think I like the guy with the club side more, maybe because it's a little bit easier. I thought the curved sword side kind of caught you in a roll catch with one of his 3-move combos. And so but that's the thing about it. I prefer the club side, so you can just position yourself for the club side and fight him that way. And I really enjoyed the fight. So I think it's one of the better bosses in the game, actually. So just like the Pursuer, I was happy to see it show up later in the game as it didn't feel like a common enemy. It like only showed up like 2 or 3 more times, like similar to the Pursuer. Like, it didn't feel cheapened by its future appearances, the way that, like, say, like an Ancient Hero of Zamor or a Beastman of Farum Azula in Elden Ring do. I felt like I was pleasantly surprised by its future appearances. The Ruined Sentinels, I have a hard time kind of characterizing. Basically, I think it's mid. I don't hate their movesets, and I actually think it's an interesting arena, how you're on this kind of small, smaller ledge, and there are 2 more that can jump up and fight you, or you can go down and fight them together. So I kind of actually liked the fight. This is one where I think its future appearances are cheapened, do cheapen the original boss, because it just absolutely ganks you in Drangliat Castle. And I think that like its appearance there sucks. It's in this one particular room where you have to kill some statue guys to feed golems, and most of the statues will just reveal another Ruined Sentinel, and so every time you run back through that room, there's an extra Ruined Sentinel. So I think it gets up to like 5 in the room, just ganking you at the same time, and you have to go back there that was my favorite Dark Lurker run back zone. It's complicated if you don't know what I'm talking about, but if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And so just like getting through that room is such a hassle until I found out there's a bonfire down there. So I hated that room, and that room made me dislike these guys a lot more. But that boss fight, like the trio, was actually pretty interesting. And I like the way that you had the option to fight them solo, so you weren't ganked by a trio. So yeah, interesting fight, actually. Belfry Gargoyles, I think I have decided, is my least favorite FromSoft fight of all time. It's just a gank, and I hate their moveset. They're like too fast, they have too much range, and they can also just squirt fire at you, and so you're just running around the outside of this rooftop until you can get a hit in on one of them, and then likely get punished. Like, I just thought it sucked. It also, I'm never going to fight it again because there's nothing good there. I can't remember specifically what it is. I think it's like a miracle or a sorcery or something. So maybe if I'm doing a run like that, I'll grin and bear it and fight my way through it. But I will not enjoy the fight. I thought it was terrible. It took what I thought was a pretty bad fight, but it at least made sense in Dark Souls 1. There's like a mechanic in Dark Souls 1 that makes sense. Like the second one doesn't show up until it's been a certain amount of time, or the first one has gotten down to a certain amount of health. So it's kind of a DPS test. But in this case, they just wake up very quickly and there's 4 or 5 of them attacking, and you just run around and get a hit in. It sucks. It's atrociously bad. I hated that fight. Lost Sinner was just very mid. I don't feel strongly about its moveset. I didn't really like it. It's more interesting than the Dragon Rider for sure, because it does have like an actual, and it's more interesting than the Last Giant. It's not as bad as some of these. But it's just like very kind of forgettable. Yeah, I literally would rather fight an Alabaster Lord from Elden Ring than the Lost Sinner. And it's one of the kind of 4, I forgot what they were called, but it's guarding one of the Primal Bonfires. So it's a kind of major boss, and it just was kind of mid, so low C. Executioner's Chariot, I guess you would call it a gimmick boss. I actually thought it was really cool. I thought it was a cool concept. I liked it enough. Once you close the gate and destroy the chariot, the fight was, with the horses was fine. Yeah, I don't hate it. I'm gonna give it kind of mid B tier. I like it about as much as Wolnir. I thought it was fun. I thought it was a fun, unique kind of idea. So, yeah, that's where it'll live for me. Skeleton Lords was terrible. I hate the gank fights in this game, and it was just a gank. I really don't like. They did it with the gargoyles, and they did it with rats, and they did it with spiders. Like. Just having like a bunch of, well, actually what's weird about this one is the skeletons all share the health bar. So there's like just 15 enemies in the room that share a health bar. So it was just boring. It was just boring and bad. And I just didn't like it. It wasn't even a boss, really. It wasn't a boss. It was just a room. Covetous Demon, I barely remember the fight. So I don't have enough to say about it, either good or bad. I just, went in there, first tried it, kind of just run around. Oh, it has some pretty annoying charges that wind up pretty quickly and do a lot of damage to you, and its whole body is a hitbox, and I don't generally like that. So I'm going to put it pretty low. I think I actually have Last Giant too high. I'm going to push Last Giant down to D tier. Myth of the Baneful Queen. I'm ashamed to say I had to look her up, because I was like, this fight is so impossible. How can you possibly do this? And it turns out you can actually get rid of the poison in her room. With the poison in her room, I think she's a terrible fight. She's like impossible. Without the poison in her room, I think she's interesting, actually. It's just kind of boring. Without the poison in her room, it's just she has a spear and does a couple of moves, and they're not too hard to dodge, kind of like the rest of the game. Oh, come on, I clicked an ad. I'm trying to X out the ad. She does have a cool design, kind of like Medusa, like holding her head. So yeah, she's fine. Nothing really to write home about. Royal Rat Vanguard. Oh, there are 2. I found out I don't think I actually fought the Royal Rat Vanguard. I only fought the Royal Rat Authority, which is the one that has like the 4 rats, plus the big rat. So I don't know where the Vanguard was. I think I must have missed it. But the Authority, yeah, it was a gank, but there were only 4 little rats. It was annoying that they, pretty much guaranteed give you toxic, and so your health is just ticking down when you fight the big guy. But the 4 little rats, you basically one-shot them, like 1 or 2 shot them. They're not too bad. There's only 4. Could have been way worse, like the spider that's coming up, the spider gank or the skeleton gank. So I didn't hate it. And then the fight with the big guy was fine. It's just like fighting any dog, like Sif or Red Wolf of Radagon, like it just, or Ava later. Like it has kind of a weird moveset that, I don't know. I didn't love it. It didn't feel unique. It felt the opposite of unique. It felt lazy. So I'm giving it pretty low C. The Rotten was cool. The Rotten is like the Lost Sinner. It was guarding one of the Primal Bonfires. I thought it had, it didn't have a very interesting moveset. It's kind of like an Asylum Demon. But it looked really cool. And it Had a really good arena. The run up to it, sucks. I didn't figure out like a route to avoid the poison. I don't know what they were called, the things that spit poison at you. So I usually got into the fight poisoned, which is annoying, but I don't know. It was fine. It wasn't too hard. Maybe took me 2 or 3 tries. So I don't hate it. It was good. C tier though. That's what you get when you only have 3 moves, right? So the Scorpioness, again, just very mid. Nothing really that memorable. I guess, I don't know. You go in the room and she shoots a soul spear at you, and then she pops up and it's Romana or Quelaag or, take your pick of hot chick atop weird animal. So it's fine. Then, once you're fighting her straight up, she wasn't that hard. She did this thing where she burrows down, and I think I first tried her or I second tried her or something, so I didn't like really sink my teeth into this one, but she burrowed down and you can see where she's going, like obviously, but then I have no idea how to, I like thought I rolled at a perfect time and it did like a ton of damage to me, so I don't really know what to do about the burrow move. I might need to look that up. But just like not that interesting of a fight, like the rest of these kind of low C tier. Probably Magic and Congregation. This is another one where it's just like 8 enemies sharing a health bar. That was stupid. It wasn't hard. It was just annoying. Not really a boss. Dukester Freya. If there weren't spiders in the room, I actually think it would be a decent fight, because I think I think Freya is interesting with the 2 heads, kind of similar to the Flexile Sentries. With a bunch of spiders in there, it's like basically feels unmanageable because she's charging at you, hits you with her big legs. The spiders hit you with their legs. It's just like, what's the point? So I'm going to put her pretty low. I disliked Freya probably more than is even fair, but I'm putting her low D. Smelter Demon I thought was a high point of the game. I think there are a few good bosses. Most of them are late. This is the earliest good boss, I think. I'm going to give it an A tier. I really enjoyed the fight. I didn't love the mechanic that it, if you're melee, I didn't love the mechanic that it burns you when you're close to it, because then you're just constantly taking damage. But it was interesting, yeah, good moveset, feels fair, but challenging. A lot of fun. I will say the run back was not that bad in the Iron Keep, because I was doing a strength build, so I could just smash the Elan Knights and basically one-shot everything on the way there. Also, I think the run back isn't so bad in Iron Keep because you're not ganked by anything. There's like a pretty narrow path to get there, and so you can pretty easily take everything out just one at a time. So I didn't think it was too bad. On the other hand, I'll just do the Blue Smelter Demon right now. I think it had a way worse run back. An insanely bad run back. I played Skull of the First Sin edition, and so that run back is truly terrible. So I'm just gonna, the fight is about the same, so I'm gonna just put the blue one after, because I think it's a worse run back. I don't know if the fight is any different. They seemed the same to me. The Old Iron King was very mid first try boss that I didn't sink my teeth into, because it big and didn't have a challenging moveset, so put it between the rats and Nika. The duo Dragon Riders, they weren't an improvement to the regular Dragon Riders. They were probably worse, so I don't feel strongly about it because it wasn't difficult. It was just 2 easy bosses with, a 3-move moveset in the same room. So the Looking Glass Knight was cool. My understanding is that he has a PvP element that I didn't see because I play offline. But he had a cool moveset. I liked him. Yeah, I'll put him, a decently high C tier. I like him about this much. I would fight him in ODK around the same amount. Demon of Song is one that I think is penalized by its area beforehand. I think the area beforehand of mana is frustrating as hell, because there's a lot of casters who have very long range spells with good tracking. So it's hard. It feels like you're being ganked even though you're going methodically and fighting one enemy at a time. And so after that, really awful area that took me forever to get through. I mean, not forever. Felt like it took me way longer than it should have to get through. Like I should have been able to get through it on my first time, and it took me several tries. It's honestly several human effigies to get through. And I was hoping for a really good boss, and it just wasn't a really good boss. It just covers its, it's really obvious when you're able to attack, and it just kind of sits there after it does a hand slam and lets you hit it 2 or 3 times before it closes up its face again. So I did not find it interesting, and because it was so bad to get to, I felt I deserved a better boss than I got. So I'm putting it pretty low. I'm putting it with Abretus, and wow, it's not as bad as Rom. But yeah, it's right above Rom, so there you go. But again, I'm not just talking about the boss there. I'm definitely penalizing it for what it made me go through to get to it. So there's that. Velstat's fine. He felt kind of like just like a common enemy in Elden Ring, right? Like not that interesting, but better than most. So I'll put it at the bottom of the B tier. It was more interesting than the Ruined Sentinels because it's like a one-on-one fight, which I prefer. He just, wasn't that difficult, wasn't that interesting. The Guardian Dragon has one of the coolest settings. I think it's one of the coolest arenas. I love that like bird cage kind of feel at the top of the world in the Dragon Eyrie. One of the coolest areas in the game too. But the fight itself was just not great. He flies away a lot, which just isn't fun. You're just kind of waiting for it to stop shooting fire at you so you can get after it. But because its arena is so fun and it's not that bad, I'll give it a mid-C. It's just nothing to write home about. Ancient Dragon, on the other hand, very bad. Huge, you just poke it in the foot till it dies, which takes forever. Didn't enjoy it. Similarly, Giant Lord did not enjoy. I think it has 2 moves, not difficult, very bland, and has a very terrible memory to get to it. I think it's fair to put it somewhere kind of similar to Decaying X-Likes. Actually, I think Ancient Dragon belongs there too. It's not as bad as some of those. It's like a Decaying X-Likes for me. I'll skip the Dark Lurker and say Vendrick. I'll do like the rest of the game and then do the Dark Lurker first. So Vendrick isn't really like a boss. Like he has like 2 or 3 moves and he's such a sponge for damage, which is boring. So I'll penalize him for that. But it's not really meant to be like a good boss fight. It's more like a story moment. I didn't even really feel like I needed to kill him. I don't know if it was required for something, but because of how cool Vendrick is, I really liked his memory. I'll put him in the C tier rather than the D tier, even though as a fight, it's really bad. But I'm not so blind that I would just judge it on the fight. Of course, the fight is bad. That's not really the point of fighting Vendrick. So, the Throne duo, it was fine. It's hard to think of anything to say about it. I wasn't trying to do like a no-hit or whatever. I was fine trading damage, so it was just a fine fight. It's a duo. They didn't feel super like unbalanced. One of them was a little bit more of a distance. It would cast at you or shoot arrows or whatever it did. I don't even remember. I think I first tried these guys. The other guy was a little bit more aggressive and more tanky and would come up to you, so you kill him first, and then you kill the faster one who kept their distance from you earlier, and then you fight Nishandra. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Nishandra was actually a fine fight. If it was just a regular fight in this game, I wouldn't be too hard on it. Like, I'd probably give it like another mid kind of C tier. But since it was the final boss, I have to penalize it for being so underwhelming. I thought there was going to be I was like, there's no way this is it. There has to be a phase 2, right? And then when I killed her, she was just dead and the game was over. I was like, what? It was insanely bad as a final boss. So because of that, she's going to be a low D tier. Otherwise, like, the fight itself isn't terrible, but it had more of a responsibility and failed to live up to it. Very like whimper of an ending to Dark Souls 2. I didn't fight Aldia. I didn't know. I missed something. Maybe that's related to fighting Vendrick. I didn't do that till later, but so I didn't fight Aldia. So I don't know if there's a more interesting final boss there. But yeah, Nishandra ain't it. The trio NPC gank sucks. It wasn't too hard because it had a decent arena where it was easy enough to separate them, but it was bad. So I'm gonna put it with the other NPCs. It was just NPCs, it was the same as the Dark Lurker run back. I'll do the Dark Lurker now. I really liked him. I wasn't obsessed with him. I think it was very unbalanced because the first phase is insanely easy because there is a second phase where you're fighting 2 of them at the same time. So every single time you fight him, it's just like, all right, let's just get through the first half of the health bar in no time at all. And then it's really the fight. And it's a lot of kind of running away. I think the spells are fair because there's a lot of, even though it's 2 guys casting spells at you, you'd think I would give it a total F because that sounds like what I would completely hate. That was actually kind of fair because there's a ton of telegraphing for all the spells, like the fire Like he usually summons a ball above his head, and then he either throws a dark orb at you or fire orbs out at you, or he'll like zoom up into the air and shoot a laser at you. All very well telegraphed, and you can get out of the way. It's just kind of difficult. It's easiest if you get them bunched up together, and then they do their really easy to strafe sword, like dark sword attack. That was how I ended up beating him, or got closest all the times I got close. He did have a terrible run back, like to the point where I got like one cool thing about Dark Souls 2 is when you kill an enemy 12 times, it stops respawning. So I got to the point where his run back, which was the dark portal underneath Drangleic Castle for me, I got to the point where that it was just a run back. I didn't have to fight the NPCs because I fought them all so many times, 12 times to be exact. But he was a cool boss. I'm going to put him in like a high B. I would rather fight him than Aldrich. I liked the Dark Lurker. Alana, I did not like. I didn't hate her, but I found her to be very cheap. I think that her summons are very annoying, and unlike the Dark Lurker, her spells do not have nearly as much telegraphing and are very punishing. I didn't think it was very fun. I didn't think it was a fun fight, and I didn't enjoy beating this fight. So I'm putting her like pretty low C. Yeah, like maybe like mid C. Yeah, I think she's pretty bad, to be honest. I didn't enjoy fighting her. Sin, the Slumbering Dragon. I mean, I usually love Dark Souls DLC dragon, or I should say like FromSoft DLC dragons. I didn't love Sin. I liked Sin. And maybe I just got the fights where he decided to fly away a ton. It was cool to fight a dragon that finally, it wasn't like, well, I guess it still was. I was going to say, to fight a dragon that wasn't like, oh, this is, he's way past his prime and you're just fighting a shell of what he really is, like Baal or Placidusax or Catlamite. But I guess Sin actually has been like speared in the back. So it's kind of the same, but it doesn't feel that way because he flies around so much. It feels like you're actually fighting like a flying dragon. The downside of that is that it's not very fun to just wait for him to come back to the ground and then miss your punish window because he flies up again. And also he destroys weapons really quickly. So I thought he's the worst DLC dragon of the bunch. I prefer Calamite and Madir and Baal like greatly to him, so I'm gonna put him in the B tier, but he's better than a lot of these still. Yeah, I'll put him like around here. Okay, we're getting to the good stuff. I'll save the good ones for last because Ava, it was just kind of mid. So like I'll put like bottom of C, just like mid. The bottom of C being, the foundation of Dark Souls 2 bosses in the bottom of C tier here. And the duo pets was terrible. And the three that I have left are my three favorite in the game, easily. So Surlon, I think, is goated. I think it's the best boss in the game. I really like his pace. I like how punishing he is. I love his arena. It's so cool. I love the way he looks. He's one of the bosses where the thing that I love about these games is when you are fighting somebody and the first like 2 or 3 times you fight him, he just absolutely destroys you, and you're looking at him like, how in the world am I ever going to best this fight? Like, how am I even going to learn this? Is this even worth trying? And then a couple more tries later, you've figured out a couple moves, and a couple more tries later, you've, seen phase 2 and started figuring out some of those moves. And then, after like maybe 15 tries, you're getting really close, and then it's just a matter of executing and getting lucky and figuring it out. Is the, Surlon to me is the perfect example of like learn and win, just get better. And I just really loved his moveset. I loved his aesthetic. I loved his story. Of course, I hate the Old Iron King as a boss and as a character, so I'm not really sure why Surlon like supported him, but I really love Surlon. I think he's the best one in this game. And for that reason, he's going S tier for me. I do think the ceiling on DS2 bosses is Surlon, and I think it's lower than the heights of a lot of Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3 bosses, so he's going to be kind of mid to low S tier. But he is my boy. I love Surlon. Runback is cancerous, just truly insane to have to get there. Again, sort of like the Dark Lurker. I was at the point where enemies were not respawning on the run back, so the run back got a little bit easier. But worth it, so worth it. I love this fight and want to do it more. The Fume Knight is similarly probably going to go in the S tier, but like lower for me. And I think there's a lot of reasons why. The hitboxes on his Ultra Sword felt strange. It's all I can really say. They felt strange. I haven't analyzed it super closely, but some of the hits that I received felt wrong. And part of that might be because of my iframes. I only leveled up adaptability to the point where I got like 11 iframes, I think. So maybe I just felt I deserved more and got hit when I thought I shouldn't have. But frankly, this might be kind of controversial. I think the Fume Knight isn't the highest S tier for me, or isn't the best boss in Dark Souls 2, because it's just not that hard. He doesn't seem to have that many moves. I think it's maybe like 5 or 6 moves. And that's including phase 2. Like, it's really not that many. More, it's a matter of managing stamina, because he can do a quick combo that does, anywhere between 2 and 4 hits, where he does 2 swipes with his right-hand sword, and then can either do a stab with his right-hand sword or a variety of swipes with his Ultra Sword. And then, once he's powered up his Ultra Sword, I think it's actually a lot easier. I think I usually didn't take hits during that phase. But in any case, looks really cool. A fun DLC. I'm glad to have fought him and experienced it. But I don't want to fight him again as badly as I want to fight Sir Alon again. And lastly, the Burnt Ivory King. Kind of a lot to say about this one. I'm going to keep it relatively short, but I am going to give him like an A tier. I enjoyed it a lot. The experience of the fight is a little bit annoying, because the first phase is sort of just like a battle royale where you can recruit a couple of his knights throughout the DLC after you've melted the area, and they help you fight like a dozen plus of his own knights that are corrupted or burnt or whatever. So that's kind of like a throwaway. I will say, and I've only played the game once. I'm sure that on a replay I'll be more annoyed by it, but I will say it was very cool the first time to jump down into the Chaos Bed and, it's you and the Silver Knights fighting the Black Knights coming out of the the Oblivion Gates. It was cool. I'll probably be annoyed about that phase in the future, but it was really fun. Kind of accomplished the same thing that like the Radon Festival was supposed to feel like. But interestingly, in the Radon Festival, I don't ever use the NPCs, so I think it actually accomplishes that aspect of it better, like feeling like you're hosting a battle royale. The fight against him is kind of boring. He doesn't have that many moves again, like all these bosses. He doesn't look cool. The hitboxes seem weird. Yeah, that's about it. Once I figured out you need to roll to the left, it was a lot easier. So, yeah, but he was good. He was one of the better ones in the game. And it's, the last DLC, the last boss of the last DLC, so it has that kind of pride of place. Not even close to living up to Gale or, Manus, who I actually didn't even like that much. I guess I prefer him to Manus, but that's because it's an easier fight. I prefer the one-on-one humanoids against one-on-one beasts fights. So yeah, that's my final ranking. I will do one last scroll, and then I will call it.